I thought this was all about social justice. I was the general counsel with the Forzani Group, and I'd done some other things post that, and they asked me if I wanted to join this group. And when I got in, I quickly realized while it had something to do with social justice, it had everything to do with business. So playing off Michael and Nenshi and my two wonderful colleagues here, that was my starting point. So I'm on the job 3 years ago. I'm on the job for about 3 months, and I'm fairly precocious. And I'm talking to a friend of mine who's an employer, and I'm trying to convince him about why he should be hiring international talent. I don't use the word skilled immigrant. I use international talent. It sounds sexier. You've arrived on your own private jet. You've landed. There's a job waiting for you. And so he finally looked at me after my badgering him for half an hour, and he said, Randall, I don't care if this guy is brown, green, blue, pink, polka dotted, or whatever. And I was thinking to myself, okay, that's fine. You're telling me that you're not a racist. Okay, point number one. But point number two, I looked back at him and I shot back at him, and I guess because I knew him well, and I said, but you care if he's a purple engineer. He says, what do you mean? He said, I'd hire him if I said, exactly. You would hire him if he's a purple engineer. Do you currently have a purple engineer in your office? And he said, no. I knew that was a safe answer. If he did have a purple engineer, I'd be in some real trouble. And I said, because he's going to bring a purple perspective that you don't currently have sitting around your table. And I thought to myself, okay, so that makes some sense. I really wasn't sure what I was saying. I had only been on the job for about 3 months, and I was kind of getting used to this stuff, and I was wondering, how does that really work? I say it kind of facetiously. I can make people feel uncomfortable when I say that in a meeting, but what does it really mean? And so over the succeeding 3 years, my little organization, which is about 5.5 members, depending on the day, our half person is really, really short. I'm short, and they're shorter than I am. So 5.5 people, but we work with thousands of folks across the city. We work with employers, immigrant serving agencies, post-secondary schools, ethno-specific communities. And I was trying to figure out how does this whole diversity thing really translate into a true business case. And Michael's got the numbers, and I still think Chief Dan George and Martin Luther King, and I know it can work. But I wanted to do some real research. So what we do is we connect internationally trained professionals or international talent with Calgary employers and strategies we think will lead to successful employment outcomes. And those successful employment outcomes would be successful for both the employer and for the international talent. And so envision your engineer, your teacher, your IT person, your lawyer from Venezuela, Peru, China, wherever, landing in Calgary, and through mentoring strategies and through career path planning strategies, we attempt to try to put the two together, and we've been somewhat successful, and I see there's some other immigrant serving agencies in the audience today. I see Dale. And Center for Newcomers, for example, would do similar things. So there's a number of players in this field in Calgary. But I was always a bit more fascinated as well as to what's really happening. And so I'm gathering international trained lawyers, and we're meeting down at the Petroleum Club before the Association of General Counsel of Alberta. I've been trying for 2 years to get into this group. So these are the guys mostly guys that hold the keys to jobs for lawyers in companies downtown. So luckily I had Shell and Imperial, and I had some great people sitting around the table. And while I might like to speak, as you can tell, I brought in 4 rock stars. 4 international trained lawyers. They were like my entourage, and they were unbelievable. So we're sitting down, kind of like George Strombopoulos, a little bit of an interview, and they're talking, and I kind of prepped them to be able to address this audience of about 30 or 40 lawyers. And then I threw some curveballs at each one, and I said, tell the group, Abby from Nigeria, why you think you're a rock star in this room and why you should get hired. And I didn't realize, but Abby had just been hired 2 days earlier by Imperial. And Abby said, it's because I'm a 5th-year lawyer, and when I landed in Calgary and I articled with Imperial, they didn't get a wet behind the ears kid. They got a lawyer with 5 years experience. So when I was asked to do a memo, and if there's any lawyers in the audience, you know the first memos you do as an articling student are 10 pages long. 9.5 is bullshit. And so she said, I gave you the last 2 paragraphs of a 10-page memo because that's all that you needed. You got 5th year experience. And I thought, wow, this is great. So now everybody in the audience is now inching up a little bit closer. It was quite a sight down at the Petroleum Club. Charles, who had just landed, and Charles is my mentee, Charles had just started articling, but he didn't have a whole lot of experience. But Charles said, even though I don't have 5 years experience, I had 1 year experience, but when I landed in Calgary, I had this amazing ability to adapt. And I adapted really fast. And that's what you're going to get in me as an articling student. This is what you're going to get in me as a lawyer. Priscilla, who had gone from Nigeria to Germany to New York City to Canada, had been developing this expertise in derivatives. She then got a job with the Alberta Securities Commission, taught the Alberta Securities Commission derivatives, and is now the head of derivatives at Denton's, which is the old Fraser Milner, where I articled way back about 50 years ago. And she's only been on the job for about 2 years. So there's this incredible sense of something. So I was trying to wrap my head around what this something was. So we do a lot of focus groups, and I work in a completely diverse environment. And so I'm chatting with my team, I'm chatting with others, and I said, talk to me about what diversity is from your perspective and what do you bring to the table. And they talked about 3 things, and as employers in the room, you can think about these 3 things. Number 1 is that there is a global outlook that international talent brings to the table. So I said, explain this. Well, global in the sense, 2 senses really. 1, you're outside Canada, so you have that global outlook. But 2, many international trained professionals that are going to land sitting across from you having coffee will have worked in a global context wherever they have been, meaning that they have always worked at the intersection of cultures. So if you hire an engineer from India, you're pretty well sure that he has also worked with people from Russia, China, the UK, South Africa, and the United States. So they have already developed this ability to understand where cultures intersect. Okay. Number 2, you've got this different life experiences, which we all share here. I'm from northern New Brunswick, and I can tell you that when I walked into Fraser Milner to interview for my articling position, I can tell you there was nobody in that room had my experience. And so I began to realize, okay, so diversity is a really large idea. So this whole idea of life experiences, that the international talent that you're going to be working with have a different way of looking at things. They have a different way of processing information, a different way of articulating critical thought. Okay, so that's pretty good. So you got somebody with a global experience, you got somebody with this other life experience and this ability to articulate global thought or to articulate critical thought from a global perspective. And thirdly, and maybe most importantly, you have a flexible, adaptable, and courageous person. Do you understand the guts it takes to leave where you've come from to come to Calgary? These are rock stars that are landing in Calgary. For the most part, I'm dealing with folks that I'm not even on their intellectual plane. I mean, these are great folks with some great experiences. And so, as one of my other mentees has told me, she has to redefine herself every single day. Take what I was, what I want to do, and I'm redefining myself every day. So then how does that all translate into either innovation or somehow success in the workplace? And it translates into different perspective. You now have different ideas, and you have a different energy level. And so those 3, I think, to me, when I talk to the employers that we work with, and we work with about 65 employers, many of whom are in the room today, and this is what I talk about. So when I walk into a room, I'm talking about workforce planning strategies. I might have the social consciousness in the back of my head. That's why we do it at the end of the day. But ultimately, it's about clearing the big rocks off your road. So if you're an employer, You want to have a conversation with somebody about clearing the big rocks off your road. So a couple of quick hit stories. So I like working with people who walk the talk. People who walk the talk are the City of Calgary, and I see some of my key contacts from the City of Calgary today. The City of Calgary is a moral authority. They wear a hat of moral authority. They're also one of the largest employers in town. We have about 50 or 60 people at the City of Calgary have mentored internationally trained professionals through our group alone, and I know others have done similar things in other organizations. So mentoring one-on-one, the old classic mentoring one-on-one is something that employers want to do, and you want to get connected with people in the city who do that. Okay. The Calgary Police Service. We have worked extensively with the Calgary Police Service, and again, another sense of moral authority. So we worked a really cool concept with CPS about 2 months ago, where we brought internationally trained professionals into a room who were interested in a career as a sworn officer, not just as an IT person or as a secretary, but as a sworn officer. And we engaged about a dozen CPS officers in storytelling. So that is a strategy that if you're looking to hire hard-to-fill jobs, the strategy that we employed with both the city and the CPS is through something that we call Smart Connections, but other organizations call it by a number of different things, just ways to smartly connect. We like to connect with large but nimble organizations. SNC-Lavalin and TransCanada would be two examples. I walked into a room to talk to SNC-Lavalin, and I walked in and it was the United Nations already. SNC-Lavalin gets it because they get this whole idea of perspective and global outlook. It specifically ties into what they do. But we've also worked with very small organizations. Tell you one quick story. A fellow came out from Ontario, small engineering organization called JMP Engineering, and he wanted to create a footprint in Calgary. And so he connected with us because he understood outlook, life experiences, and this flexibility and adaptability. And in designing an engineering team, that's exactly what he was looking for. So we were able to connect with him, and we were able to fit the bill. So there are things that are getting done by a lot of great people in the city, and I do encourage employers, please do connect. And hopefully during the Q&A we can talk a bit more about that. Thanks. Great.